Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. This is the 5th video in a series where I'm going to look at various popular endgame unique items and discuss why they're good and how you can source them. So here, I'm not just going to be talking about one item, I'm going to be talking about two that are effectively twins of each other. This is Farrul's Fur, first introduced in the Bestiary expansion about 3 years ago, and Replica Farrul's Fur, first introduced in the Heist League approximately 3.5 months ago. So, these items superficially look quite similar. They're actually a little bit tricky to understand, to follow what's going on, because a lot of the parts of this item are related to Aspect of the Cat. Aspect of the Cat is a buff that is not granted by either of these items. It's a buff that you're going to have to source some other way, and we'll talk about that later. What Aspect of the Cat is, it's a cycling mechanic, so it spends some of its time giving you one buff, then some of its time giving you another one. It's similar in that way to many of the Ascendancy class features of the Elementalist class. However, it has a few things going for it that make it really, really solid. So by default, Aspect of the Cat reserves 25% of your mana, but with either version of Farrul's Fur, it's going to have that reduced to 0. By default, Aspect of the Cat works on a 10-second cycle. Firstly, it grants you 4 seconds of cat stealth. During cat stealth, you're good at inflicting crits on enemies, you're hard for monsters to detect, and also you have 15% chance to avoid all damage from hits. Then when it flips over into the cat's agility side of things, instead you will gain a bonus to attack speed and cast speed. So by default, you have 4 seconds of the cat's stealth followed by 6 seconds of cat's agility. When you equip Replica Farrul's Fur or Farrul's Fur, this will change a little bit. With Farrul's Fur, you will have a 50-50 split. 6 seconds of cat stealth followed by 6 seconds of agility. With the Replica, it will extend the difference between the two. So you'll have 4 seconds of stealth followed by 8 seconds of agility. Each of these items will give you a bonus to the part of Aspect of the Cat that is having its duration increased. So for Farrul's Fur, you'll have 50% uptime on phasing, and for Replica Farrul's Fur, you will have 2/3 uptime on onslaught as a result of the last line. But the reason you're going to use this item is these two mirrored lines. Gain up to your maximum number of Frenzy and one other type of charge when you gain Cat's agility or stealth. So once per 12 seconds, you are going to have all of your Frenzy charges replenished, and if you're using the Replica, all your Endurance charges. If you're using the original, all your Power charges will be replenished. This is incredibly powerful. By default, with charges having a 10-second duration, this is going to give you 5/6 uptime on full Frenzy charges and on full Endurance charge or Power charge uptime. And with a couple of little nodes on the tree, which increase the duration of your charges, you can easily get this to 100% uptime. So this is incredibly powerful. Having Frenzy charges, Endurance charges, or Power charges will give considerable boost to your character, and also can be further, these effects can be further augmented by various items and by various nodes on the tree. You can also use these charges, you can spend these charges if you want, but do be aware that they're only going to replenish once per 12 seconds. And that is ultimately the reason that you would consider using these items. So for Replica Farrul's Fur, what you'd be looking at using this on is an assassin, in most cases. The reason you'd consider an assassin is because on an assassin, it is extremely easy to replenish all of your power charges via the unstable infusion node of the assassin ascendancy. And so for that reason, this will enable you to have full uptime on maximum Frenzy charges, full uptime on maximum Endurance charges, full uptime on Power charges, because you're going to get that as an assassin anyway, and it's going to do that at the cost of not reserving any mana, and all you're really giving up for it is that you're using a chess piece that has 100 maximum life, which is okay, and also has a fair chunk of both armor and evasion. As an assassin, you're probably better at scaling the evasion, but that can be a moderate defensive layer as well. So ultimately you have a chest that is providing you with 3 Endurance charges by default, maybe more with some top end gear. It's providing you with 3 Frenzy charges that you don't need to work for, or it's providing you with 7 or more in conjunction with the very powerful unique item Badge of the Brotherhood. and it's also going to give you Onslaught some of the time. Ultimately, it is an all-around very, very powerful package. So let's talk about how you source these items. The original way of getting Farrul's Fur was through the bestiary system, and that's still possible. When you run an Einhar mission on a tier 13, 14, 15, 16 or higher map, to get higher than tier 16 requires unique watchstones that only drop from Cirrus at the time I'm making this video, and those are consumables. Those are actually mapping consumables rather than a permanent quest item like a watchstone, like a traditional watchstone. But tier 13 and up maps can drop, well, not drop, but when you run an Einhar mission in them, there can be a beast in them that will, when sacrificed on the altar, open up a portal to Farrul's Den. The actual fight with Farrul is not particularly difficult, and at least not for an endgame character, certainly not for someone that runs enough maps to encounter him. And then once you've defeated that, you will have a 1 in 10 chance of Farrul's Fur itself dropping, and a 9 in 10 chance of getting one of the other 3 pieces of this item set. And you will also get, you'll also capture Farrul, which you can then use to add a suffix which grants Aspect of the Cat onto any rare item. Now, that rare item does need to have a suffix slot open, but then you can permanently modify that item. It's like using an Exalted Orb, except you know exactly what you're going to get, and that will be that this item grants level 20 Aspect of the Cat. Lower levels than 20 don't exist. So that's how you would source Farrul's Fur. There's also a couple of divination cards that will grant Farrul's Fur, but will not grant you a captured Farrul. So you will not be able to then craft on Aspect of the Cat onto another piece of item, another piece of equipment. And these divination cards include, there's the very rare drop, Pride of the First Ones, which drops in Lair and a couple of other maps. There's the uncommon drop Council of Cats, which drops from El Hezman the Hunter. And there's Boon of the First Ones, which has a much lower chance to get you Farrul's Fur. And this one drops in the Pit of the Chimera. So these are divination cards that will get your hands on the original Farrul's Fur. And part of the reason that the original Farrul's Fur is more common and in a trade league generally cheaper to trade for than the replica. As for the replica, at the time that I'm recording this, the only way to get it is from a curio room in a Grand Heist, and it is a very rare drop there. So it's something that will be very precious if you do get it. In a lot of leagues, this is going to be your single biggest drop if you get it. And I think it's the sort of thing that you'd expect to trade in the future for maybe 2 Doctor Divination cards to give you a sort of sense as to the value of this item, at least what I'm speculating in future trade leagues. As for getting this in solo self-found, what you're going to need to do is prioritize acquisition of high-tier Einhar missions. What you're going to need to do for this is blitz maps. You're going to need to blitz red tier maps and just run to the boss, kill the boss as quickly as you can. Doing this, once you've got a decent awakening level bonus, this will give you a percentage chance to replenish a master mission. And sometimes, 1 in 5 times that you do this, you'll get an Einhar mission. You're then going to need to run your Einhar missions on the highest tier maps you've got available. So basically, on tier 16 maps. Do juice those up a bit, because it's been my experience that monster pack size bonuses on the map, I could be wrong on this, but I believe they offer a chance of getting increased numbers of Einhar beasts. So increased numbers of red beasts. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but it does certainly feel that way to me. So you'll probably want to be using your Einhar missions on 8 mod tier 16 maps, and maybe 8 mod tier 15 maps, and then keep running them. You've got a reasonable chance of getting the Farrul beast, you know, like in a not unbelievable number of maps. It's not common, but it is not staggeringly rare either. Once you get the Farrul beast, you're then down to the hands of RNG, whether you get the 1 in 10 chance of getting Farrul's Fur. One of the items is a 10% drop rate, one's a 20, one's a 30, one's a 40, but Farrul's Fur is the only one that's particularly good. But even capturing Farrul once will then grant you access to the Aspect of the Cat craft. So that will help you in solo self-found, especially if you've gotten lucky and found a replica Farrul's Fur early, or you found a set of divination cards for Farrul's Fur. Then just defeating Farrul once is important to get your hands on Aspect of the Cat, because without that, the item's not much good. Anyway, that's all I got on this item. It's a really powerful all-round item. It has both defensive and offensive applications, and ultimately, it's something that you should consider as your chest armor on every character that is not an energy shield character. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go with that option, but you should think about this item on every build, unless you've got a build around unique item that you need, or you need to have an energy shield chest piece. You should at least seriously consider these two, because they're very, very good, and they can work on a large number of builds. Because ultimately, even if your build is not specialized around the abuse of frenzy charges and endurance charges, you will gain a lot from having them. Lastly, there are some really strong synergies with this item and the unique item Badge of the Brotherhood, which changes all sources of, it basically nullifies all sources of increased frenzy charges your character has, and causes all sources of increased power charges you have to also grant you an increased frenzy charge. And also, there is a node on the Slayer tree, which will cause you to have an equal number of endurance charges to your frenzy charges. So if you have both the Slayer node and the Badge of the Brotherhood, then every source of an increased power charge you can get on the passive tree will also give you an increased frenzy charge and an increased endurance charge. That's a really strong interaction. Or you can drop the Slayer part and just have every source of power charge that you get increase the number of frenzy charges you get. All of these are really strong options, and I'm going to leave it there with a few ideas for you to possibly build around. Comments or questions far away below. Otherwise, I hope you have a good one.